I'm Manuel Hernandez and welcome to Norwich City Central.
What are your thoughts on Paul Lambert before he was appointed and now after? I mean, Paul Lambert is that kind of commonality between Ipswich and Norwich, and it's gone very different ways, hasn't it?
So before he signed, I thought this is probably the best guy we can get, and I was ready to make excuses for him that Randy Lerner was disinterested at Villa and he came to Stoke too late and he had Venky's at Blackburn and then you realise, am I kidding myself making all these excuses? And then what was the other club? Wolves. He was there, and then Fosun came.
There's quite a lot of clubs, weren't there?
Yeah, and you could kind of make excuses for a lot of the clubs, and we kind of looked and we thought, oh, if you get anything like the Paul Lambert that Norwich had in 2009, happy days, because he was amazing for you. And I would argue, and I'm not trying to wind up Norwich fans here, probably, I know Dave Stringer was incredible, Mike Walker did great things, but for where Norwich were when he walked in the door, he's probably the most important figure in Norwich's history in the last, him and James Maddison probably now, in the last 20 years, he really dragged them up by their bootstraps.
Yeah, because Paul Lambert came in, I think, in August time. We just lost 7-1 to Colchester. Paul Lambert was the manager of Colchester that day. So he comes in, I think we're bottom of League One, and then obviously win the League One title, get promoted from the Championship, and then finish 12th in the Premier League comfortably as well. It was the most amount of points we've got in the Premier League since the season we finished third. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that stat. Yeah. No, he was incredible for you. Sadly for us, and I really hope to be proved wrong about this, but I've seen no evidence that he's that same guy, sadly. There's a lot of people who are suspicious now because he came in and the relegation season, he got this strange free pass that McCarthy had been there, and it was fairly obvious that the recruitment Paul Hurst did was just terrible. He basically sold all the best players.
That's weird.
Replaced them with substandard versions. No offence to the players he signed, but they weren't Waghorn, Webster, Garner, Selina, all of these guys that went, McGoldrick, who are now mysteriously all playing at a much higher level than bottom of League One, put it that way. But he seemed to get this free pass that seemed to last a long, long time, and there wasn't much of a change in the relegation season. But there was always this sense of, he's rebuilding the bridges that McCarthy burned with the fans, and it was Paul Hurst, bad recruitment, and he's got no players basically, and we're done. And then when you go into League One and you're Ipswich in League One, and don't get me wrong, I've got no arrogance about being an Ipswich fan, but come on, it's League One. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You should be able to finish in the top 6 if you're a competent manager in League One and you've had the previous season and it's your squad. And I've not seen the evidence on the pitch to say, and I really hope I'm proved wrong. I really hope he comes back next season and everything's together and it's his squad and they get some momentum and they're promoted. But I haven't seen anything to,
because you were saying even when
that'll happen.
Yeah, because you were saying even when you were top of League One, you never really thought that kind of run would continue. Or
that's me personally. Honestly, that's not me being wise after the event. I can point you to a Blue Monday podcast after we beat Shrewsbury 3-0, where I said, I don't get it. We won 3-0. We gave away a load of chances. The other team had a guy sent off. We scored a couple of quick counter-attack goals at the start, and then we scored another one against 10 men. We're top of the league. We're winning every week, but I don't think we're very good. I wasn't trying to be edgy or contrarian or whatever, but I never saw, and bear in mind, I watched 78 championship games the previous season, and there were Norwich, Leeds, Sheffield United, and Villa, all in one season, were all very, very good teams. So I knew what a good football team looked like at championship-ish level. And No. No. You know, all the good things I've seen from these teams, you know, in terms of their shape and, you know, how they manage a game, what individuals do, how they progress the ball, strikers, the type of chances they create, defending. I know what a good football team looks like outside of the Premier League, and I haven't seen it yet, Lewis. And for God's sake, you know, best times I had in my life were in the late 90s watching Ipswich take the piss and beat everybody for 4 or 5 years and then finish 5th in the Premier League. I want it, but
yeah, of course.
I'm not going to lie if I'm not seeing it, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with Farke as well, yes, obviously there was a few people who were sceptical of Farke, and it's very, as you say, it's very easy to say things in hindsight, but there was always this kind of philosophy, and although it didn't particularly work, you could see Farke was trying to bring through the youngsters. You know, we had Jamal Lewis, Max Aarons, obviously the sale of James Maddison, the Murphy that season kind of kept us afloat. So there was always promising signs for Farke, and I think signs that he was going to be given an opportunity to kind of, you know, show what he's all about. But as you say with Lambert, if there's not really this kind of philosophy, it's just very hard to pinpoint why it hasn't kind of really worked out for Lambert, I think.
Yeah, quite. And it comes down to pattern of play for me, and you know, a plan that's been developed. And by the way, this comment applies to not just people judging a Norwich team in 2018-19. It applies to anything in your life. I do not begrudge anybody who makes a position and then there's a massive change in the information and they change their position, because I'm sorry, everyone who saw Norwich for the first 6-8 games of 2018-19, it would not have been a stupid thing to say this team will not be promoted, you know, for God's sake, right. Definitely, you know, not be promoted. So I wouldn't even blame any Norwich fans for questioning Farke, because the fact of, and this was what was so bewildering to Ipswich fans, the fact of all of those things clicking pretty much all within the period of about 2 months of
so lucky. Well, it wasn't luck, I guess it was.
No, I know. Norwich fans get very salty if you say anything about luck, but sometimes your circumstances have to work in your favour. And even stupid things like in that Ipswich game, it was Max Aaron's debut, and one of your centre halves got hurt as well. So you got to see Godfrey, Aarons, and Lewis completely by chance, and then all of a sudden they're totally bossing it, you know, and all of these things, like you say, and then you move the little scruffy Finnish guy up front and he doesn't miss for the rest of the season. You put the big lumbering German in at 10 and he looks like Riquelme or something.
Exactly. You can't write it, can you?
No, it was incredible, and some very good practice and a bit of good luck, and you know, both things help each other. What was the golfer who said, the more I practice, the luckier I get? You know,
that's a good way to sum it up.
I think it's like that, but I don't begrudge anybody changing their mind. And look, if Ipswich are kicking backsides next year, I'll come back on your podcast and I'll say, nope, he's given me the evidence now that he knows what he's doing. They look great. They're playing brilliantly, and I'm convinced he can do the job now. But I need to see it first.
Yeah, but also in this age of social media, it's kind of like, if you have an opinion with one thing, you've kind of got to stick with it. And I'm just like, I can change my opinion based upon what I observe. You know,
not on social media, you can't. Someone will drag up a tweet from 3 years ago and say, "Oh, Lewis, you once said that this guy was better than this guy, therefore you must go straight to hell and be deplatformed." And social media is a lot of screaming and not a lot of listening, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But that we talk about that slide indoors and Paul Lambert and that crossover that season and straight through you going. That's the one thing us Ipswich fans grudgingly admire Norwich for, is they get one chance, one good season, and they do it. They're ruthless. They go. Whereas Ipswich will fail gloriously in the playoffs over and over again. Whereas Norwich have seemed to have had that DNA, particularly for the last 15 years, which is a good thing, of being ruthless. And that manager's not doing good. Get him out. Get someone in. That chief exec at Huddersfield is really good. Hire his wife and then get him in. Do you know what I mean? And it's not a bad quality to be ruthless.
Yeah, it's definitely a really good point there. Finally, Benjamin, what does football and sport mean to you, mate?
Oh, I love it. It's great. It means some of my best memories, and I think a lot of sort of males. Not wanting to sound sexist, but there's this rite of passage of going to the football with your father or what have you, and you take on, you end up supporting your local team or the team he supports or what have you, and I think a lot of guys that follow football have that moment where your mum says you can go to an away game on the bus with your mates. It's the first independence you get. It's the first time, you you learn about life through football. You learn about highs and lows and winning and losing. You learn about violence. You learn about how to keep your nose clean. I do genuinely think in England football is a big rite of passage, for young women as well, but particularly for young men. You
100%.
learn about life through it. So yeah, love it.